this demonstration, we'll have a look at how we can configure the default client settings. So I've come in my administration workspace. Within my administration workspace, we'll go to client settings. If we then double click on our default client settings and notice this has a priority 10,000, this is the default, currently no deployments. But anyway, we'll double click on it. And then what that'll do is that'll then take us into the properties of our default client settings. So the first thing we've got here is we've got bits or background intelligent transfer. This is actually utilized for pushing out the software. So as you can see on the settings here, we have the ability to do things like limit the network traffic, yes or no, specify the throttling window, start and finish time. We can specify the maximum transfer rate when we're throttling. We can allow bits to download outside the throttling window, yes or no, and we can also specify as well the maximum transfer rate. Cloud services, so at this point here we can allow access to the cloud distribution point if we're using one. Client policy, quite an important one here. So we've got the client polling policy interval is currently 10 minutes. Now in a default installation this will be 60 minutes. What we don't really want to happen is every 10 minutes the client's talking to the config manager server to download all of these settings from all of these settings and all of these settings down here. So what we do at this point here is we'd probably just leave that as the default or potentially increase it, but we'd only decrease it if we had a fairly fast network. So anyway, client policy polling interval 10 minutes. We can enable user policy on clients, yes or no, and enable user policy requests from internet clients, again, yes or no. We have our compliancy settings. So what we can do is we can configure a compliancy baseline, and we can then use that to remediate our devices if they fall out of compliancy. So as we can see here, we will allow that on clients, scheduled to run every 7 days, and we're not going to bother using user data and profiles. We'll probably do that through group policy. The computer agent itself, so quite a few settings within here. So we've got device settings, so we've got things like deployment deadline greater than 24 hours, remind the user every 48. What we've also got as well, if we have a look down here, we can do things like specify a website for an application catalog website for application deployment. We can add the default application catalog website to the trusted zone, allow Silverlight to run. We can specify our organization name, so let's put in a datum within there. Use the new software center, yes or no. Specify install permissions. So as you can see, quite a few settings that we can put in place here. Computer restart option, so if you are going to restart the machine, display a temporary notification to the user that indicates the interval before they're logged off and the computer restarts. We'll do that 90 minutes. And to stop them closing down the actual message that they're going to get, what we'll say here, 15 minutes before the shutdown or the user log off. At this point here, we'll just leave it permanently on the screen. We've got endpoint protection support. So this is used for anti-malware. We've got enrollment. So within enrollment, what we're doing here is this would be for our internet clients and also as well mobile clients and Mac computers. So what we're doing at this point here, we're allowing these devices to be enrolled within Config Manager. We've got our hardware inventory settings. So what we can do at this point here, enable hardware inventory, specify when we're going to collect hardware inventory, and we can also specify as well the type of data we want in that hardware inventory. We've got our metered internet connections. So what we're saying here is anybody on a metered internet connection, block them. They're costing us money. We've got network access protection support for quarantine and non-quarantine support of devices. We've got power management support. Specify remote control settings. Specify software deployment settings. We've got our software inventory, so collecting information related to software. So we can do a scan and set the types of files and also as well the files themselves to collect and store on the config manager server, and we can also configure the display names for manufacturer products. So as we can see here, inventory named currently 23, so we can see mainly Microsoft. We've got software metering, so within software metering, see when people are using the software. We've got our software update settings if we integrate WSUS with config manager. State messaging at this point here, so this will just specify how the client reports back its state messages. So what we're doing here is every 5 minutes it's going to report back. We can then check the status of those clients. We've got our user and device affinity settings at this point here. So users, if we allow them to, can select via, let's say, the software center or the application catalog. They could specify their primary device. And we can also specify up here as well where we can automatically configure affinities based off usage. And finally, we've got our Windows pre-installation environment. So we've got the cache here, so we can enable config manager client in the full OS to share content. So rather than our clients out on a remote location having to contact our management point, our distribution point, we could actually use something like branch cache. At the end of this demonstration, I've just looking at the default client settings. Thank you.